Hey everyone, this is Clinton.
And this is Dalton.
And this is the LA Do Wrestling Podcast.
So without further ado, let's get ready to podcast!
Good morning, afternoon, and evening to anyone listening anywhere they are. This is the LA Do Wrestling Podcast, where we talk about all wrestling from past, present, and future. I am one of your co-hosts, Clinton. You can find me on Instagram at ClintonWells2001.
And I'm Dalton. You can find me on Instagram at LADoBrand.
And today, we are talking about the most iconic debuts.
Well, first, let's start off with some iconic debuts that people already know of. You know, they know the NWO when Hogan was revealed as a third man.
Correct.
You have Alundra Blaze when she debuted in WCW, dumping the WWF Women's title. You got The Shield, who iconically debuted at Survivor Series. We all have our own opinions on
Very correct.
some debuts. Some are amazing, some are straight up ass. You know, that's your own opinion. I feel like today we should talk about some of our favorite and non-favorite, some disliked debuts.
Right. So, as you were saying, there's a lot of debuts in which we look back on as wrestling fans. You had, the debut of Y2J. You had the debut of Rey Mysterio when he came back from wrestling from when WCW shut its doors to when he came to SmackDown in 2002. It was a big moment in a lot of people's eyes, but it's one of the ones that you don't really think of when it comes to the most iconic debuts. But it's also an iconic debut because it was a return of someone that was important in WCW.
Right. So today we'll give you our top 5 iconic debuts. 5 least favorite and 5 favorite. Right. So go ahead and tell me, let's start off with you. What is your least favorite top 5?
Well, let me begin with I had to put an honorable mention, or a dishonorable mention for my top 5 worst debuts. And
I wouldn't necessarily say worst.
I wouldn't say worst, but it's my...
In your opinion, maybe the worst.
Yeah. But I couldn't put him on the list because it really wasn't that important in wrestling history, but I had to put it on there. And so my dishonorable mention for the least favorite was the Zombie in ECW. It was something that was a little cringy because of the whole sci-fi ECW, but I wouldn't put it as one of the top 5 least favorite because you saw him once and you got to see Sandman beat the absolute crap out of him. And I think that was something that was a pro, but it really didn't give the best look on the relaunch of ECW from the get-go.
Yeah, it was kind of doomed from the start.
Yeah, it was doomed from the start, and that was something that kind of brought it down. But what about you? What is your honorable mention or dishonorable mention for the top 5 least favorite in your opinion?
Honestly, I didn't really think of a least favorite.
You didn't?
Dishonorable mention. I didn't really... Honorable, I had a few, but dishonorable, I didn't really... It was hard enough to think of a list for me personally because I didn't go memorable as in most important to the wrestling history. It's just like me, it's like I hated these debuts, or I strongly disliked these debuts because, or liked, either one. And I have my own opinions, and it's just booking wise or personally.
Well, how about you go ahead? Since I already told my dishonorable mention, you go ahead and start with your number 5 for the least favorite.
Well, my number 5 is actually something recent. This is a recent debut. Brian Cage's AEW debut at Double or Nothing on May 23rd of this god-awful year 2020.
Well, I mean, a lot of people looked at it as a really good thing. They thought it was a new approach to the Brian Cage character. He got into a new company. He had just left Impact, I believe. But he came to AEW. He had Taz with him. I mean, it was something that was really interesting, and it was at Double or Nothing. He was the mystery man in the ladder match.
Well, it is good that, this is, a big opportunity for Brian Cage because, he was wrestling for Lucha Underground and the indie circuit before he got to TNA, Impact Wrestling. And, he served as a world champion. And you're right, he did, leave TNA. This was his first debut since he got injured.
Yeah.
And, it is a good thing. It's a big up-and-coming company. A big spot on the pay-per-view, the ladder match, everything. It just doesn't work for me. You have Brian Cage, The Machine, Swolverine in a ladder match that has so many smaller guys. It's underwhelming. You would think Brian Cage would have more of a bigger debut, something that befits someone as big as him. And what really sticks out to me is the way that it was handled. Mm-hmm. You had Brian Cage, but he didn't come out as Brian Cage at first. It was just Taz.
Yeah.
Taz comes out. He's just standing there. It's in the middle of the friggin' match, and he comes out.
Yeah.
Who can stop the path of Cage or something, which is fine. That's, fits on his name. But middle of the match, he's a fresh man. It doesn't make sense to me, booking-wise, because you have these guys, throwing themselves around the ring, tearing it up. I didn't watch the pay-per-view personally. I remember the debut.
Yeah.
But I remember, it's a ladder match. You had people like Darby Allin. Correct me if I'm wrong. Darby Allin was in the match.
Yeah.
He had it was big spots. He did like a skateboard
spot.
So you had these guys already throwing themselves, beating themselves in the ring, considerably smaller than Brian Cage.
Yeah.
Or at least most of them.
I think that...
And he goes to win it. Sorry to interrupt, but he goes to win it. Because he's the freshest man.
Well, I think that on a debut level, it was good for Brian Cage because he was in TNA, he was in Impact, and he was the world champion. And for the majority of his reign, he was injured because of a spot with Johnny Impact at the time. I do agree that the ladder match was not the way to have him debut. It kind of reminds me of the Brock Lesnar Money in the Bank coming in and just, like you said, he's all good, he's ready to go. Everyone else is beating living crap out of one another.
But like I said, I don't want to put it down because this is a bigger debut for Brian Cage. He's at a company that's got a big TV deal with TNT.
Yeah.
They got big money backings from Tony Khan.
Yeah.
And everything, and it's up and coming. It's going head to head with NXT.
Yeah.
But to me, it's just the wrong way to go about a debut.
So what you're saying is that you were happy to see Brian Cage debut in AEW, but not in that particular match.
That's what I'm saying. The way he was I'm glad that he debuted the way, in the pay-per-view in AEW, because that's the only place he could really fit. But the way he debuted kind of undermines his character because he's this big guy that's taking the easy way.
Yeah, and I do understand.
And having Taz come out first made no sense. And then he just leaves.
He's left, yeah.
Taz leaves.
Yeah.
He doesn't come back until probably the end of the match, if he even comes back.
Yeah.
But I don't want to go on a spiel, but what is your... Segueing, what is your top, or number 5 least favorite?
Mordecai.
Guys, you're really going out there.
So Mordecai debuted at Judgment Day in 2004. He went against Scotty 2 Hotty. The character himself, I hated. I didn't think it was good. It gave me that we're trying to do an Undertaker, but not an Undertaker, if you know what I mean? Like another Undertaker. Like, they made a successful character of the Undertaker, but they said, let's try it again with Mordecai, and it didn't work.
And in white, dressed in white.
And it bothers me because he would later become Kevin Thorne.
Yeah, I was going to say, didn't he have another debut as another god-awful character?
Kevin Thorne. And it bothers me because even though the whole Kevin Thorne character was on the relaunch of ECW, and he was a vampire, it kept on going with the sci-fi stuff about it, Kevin Thorne was way better than Mordecai. And it bothers me because him as a wrestler back in his OVW days and stuff like that, he was talent. He wasn't like a bad wrestler. He didn't deserve the characters that he got. And the Mordecai character was just a botch of a character as it was. But Kevin Thorne brought him a little closer to maybe becoming something. And it ended very short, but I believe the Mordecai character itself in his debut was very bad for him.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Did Kevin Thorne have Katie Lee Burchill with him? Is that the same character? Or is that a different character? Because I know there was somebody that went against Hurricane in the latter half, or the mid to latter half of 2009 in WWE ECW.
That was with Paul Burchill.
Oh, it was Paul Burchill.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember.
They had kind of
I know Katie Lee Burchill, but...
Yeah, they had kind of close to the same character.
Yeah, because he
in a
ruined
weird-
Paul Burchill.
Yeah, they ruined. Well, he was a pirate at first. It
That's
was
what I'm
kind of
saying.
ruined from the get-go. But we'll get off of that. But yeah, Mordecai as the character, not the person, has to be 5th least favorite debut. But let's continue. What is your number 4?
My number 4 least favorite is a little out there. Like my whole least favorite is kind of out there. Some of my favorite is too. But just Matt Hardy when he debuted in TNA at Genesis, January 9th, 2011. Just that was a downward trend for Matt Hardy.
Yeah.
He comes out to be the mystery man to fight, or not the mystery man because AJ Styles was
They
promised.
said it was going to be a Hardy.
He was promised Hardy. They didn't say, like, they said Hardy. They didn't specify. Out comes Matt Hardy with dreadlocks.
Wait, did you say AJ Styles?
Was it AJ Styles?
It was RVD.
Was it RVD?
Yeah.
I know AJ Styles had a match with, are you sure it was RVD?
When he debuted?
At
Yeah,
Genesis.
it was RVD.
Because I remember AJ Styles had a match with Matt Hardy at a pay-per-view as well. I
Yes,
guess it was
but
all done.
it- but the
All right,
debut itself was RVD.
RVD. Thank you for correcting me.
You're good.
RVD. And just the fact that, I'm pretty sure it was a short match too.
It was pretty short.
You have
I've
Matt
watched
Hardy come out in dreadlocks
Mm-hmm.
to a song that automatically just screamed heel. Thrown him into Immortal. And this is the point where Jeff, was going through things and eventually he would leave the company and Matt would follow because personal stuff that we're not going to get into on this. But
Yeah.
it was a horrible way to introduce Matt Hardy into TNA. This is especially not exactly a year, but right after he left WWE, goes straight into TNA because of his brother, or not because of his brother, but like with his brother, just in not the best circumstance.
Yeah.
And then thrown together in just the Immortal tag team. That was all. It was just a cluster.
I believe that they were trying to get the success from Jeff to try to be a heel, and they were trying to push him as hard as they could.
Yeah.
They were like-
That was a bad idea in its own. We'll discuss that later on.
I think it was
but-
okay, but we'll have a whole different topic another day about that. But I think they were trying to be successful off of Jeff, and they were like, let's see what we can do with a heel Hardy team, both of them being heel. And I mean,
It just doesn't work.
I think Matt's debut and Matt's his first run in TNA wasn't the best, but I think he redeemed himself. And all respect to Jeff and Matt. After a while, when it came to TNA and all that stuff, they really did get it together. And
Matt got it together after.
and story writers also realized that it wasn't the best thing to do, and they got better stories later.
Well, you say that, but it's TNA.
They've gotten better.
It's Impact.
They've gotten better.
Not when they came back. There's still some god awful
went downhill,
storylines.
but they came back. They came back. It's okay.
What's your number 4?
My number 4 is Sin Cara.
The botch. Yes. The
well,
botch
not
at
necessarily
Raw.
Both actually. So
Both, as in.
the botch entrance as his debut in the company,
and then just in general,
his botched entrance, of course, but his first match against Primo, I think it was.
It's the Raw.
It was the next Raw. Also, not a big fan of it. Both. It was like he messed up the entrance, and it was like, ooh, let's see if we can get him against Primo and see how it does. It wasn't anything special. It wasn't a botch of a match, but it wasn't anything special.
And this is the same year that Matt Hardy debuted as well. This is a couple months after Matt Hardy. Because this was after WrestleMania 27, the night after. Because you had Sheamus beat up Daniel Bryan.
Yeah, it was somewhere around there, yeah.
And, God, it was so bad. He botched that entrance so bad. And didn't he botch his... No, it wasn't he didn't botch that match with Primo.
No.
This was... The botch I'm thinking of is post... No, it is. Because he botched the Spanish Fly. Right? He fell outside the ring.
I'm not
It wasn't
quite-
until SmackDown that he got the lighting, right?
Yeah.
Where they try to cover up his botches.
I'm not... I don't know exactly. I don't remember. But factually, he messed up his botch.
He messed up his entrance. And the mask didn't help at all.
He probably couldn't see. So, but anyway, moving on past that one. You're number 3.
Brock Lesnar, when he debuted on Raw, March 18th, 2002, because watching back his debut, it made no sense.
He just came out.
He came out and just started beating up people's poor Spike Dudley.
I mean, it was cool because he was
Poor
dominating.
Spike.
But yeah,
he was dominating. But come on,
didn't make a lot of sense.
like Brock, you know Brock. Pretty much almost everyone. Not everyone, but every wrestling fan knows Brock Lesnar.
Yeah.
He's, every UFC fan knows Brock Lesnar.
Yeah.
Just about. He's the big guy. He's the one that ended the streak for The Undertaker. He's this big monster that Vince always rolls out to get some views and to put the title on for a year so you ain't got to see a garbage design on television. His debut made no sense because he just unannounced, and most debuts are unannounced, but the way he did it, he just showed up with Paul Heyman, started throwing. People didn't know who he was. Like, how are you supposed to react when he's in OVW and all you know is what the commentators are saying, but the people in attendance don't know what's going on? They just know this big guy, this big white guy with traps the size of my head, throwing around Spike Dudley like usual, like Spike Dudley does.
Yeah.
And then his match was what, against Jeff Hardy? His debut match?
I think so, yeah.
And that's not
Later
really
on.
the match. Isn't really what
It's the debut itself.
it's him showing up for the first time, and
And I also
Dislike
feel
it.
that I'm not going to say it was a missed opportunity because, of course, Brock Lesnar was a star himself, but it kind of stinks that, they kind of made him leave Shelton behind in OVW. And they were a great tag team together. But, well,
you got somebody as
you
big
know
as
how
Brock.
I feel about Shelton Benjamin and how I feel like he's
Underutilized.
one of the best wrestlers that WWE's ever had. I mean, besides that, but Brock Lesnar is a star in itself, but
Yeah.
he kind of just ran out there and started beating up Spike. Poor Spike.
That's what I'm saying. Poor Spike Dudley.
More people, but poor Spike.
Like, Spike Dudley is a hard worker for what he did in his short time in TNA, WWE, and ECW because he was the one that just got chucked.
He was the only one of the many Dudley boys besides Bubba and Devon that was able to continue because all the other ones just kind of disappeared because there was a whole bunch of other Dudley boys.
That was the whole Dudley family.
Yeah, it was a whole family of Dudleys.
But Spike he took so much of a
Lovable.
beating, and Brock didn't help that. Brock was probably safe. I don't think Spike got hurt. Not then.
I'm
He got a
not
concussion
sure.
with a dive spot on a
Yeah.
table, but
So my number 3 is the Gobbledygooker. Survivor Series 1990, same night Undertaker debuts. There really isn't much to say. I'm not gonna talk much on it. Honestly, what did a lot of people expect from a November pay-per-view? And there's this gigantic egg.
well, I mean, people were hoping for something like some iconic debut other than a turkey to
I'm-
pop out of the egg.
but it was an
Undertaker thought he
egg.
was gonna be in the egg.
But it was an egg. I mean, but a turkey came out, and that was about it. There's not much to it except there was an egg, Survivor Series, it was November, and a turkey popped out because, Thanksgiving. That's pretty much all that there is to that debut, so that's why it's middle of my rank as the least favorites in my opinion because, I mean, you can't say that he did too much wrong. I mean, he just came out in a turkey suit and, that was it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I wouldn't put it as number 1 because, yeah, disappointed, but, he didn't do anything wrong. He just was a turkey. So, I mean, moving on from that, that's just my number 3, Gobbledygooker. Your number 2.
My number 2, like I said, mine's a little out there.
Yeah.
Batista, Deacon Batista,
Oh.
2002, I believe May 9th, 2002 on SmackDown. Just because, come on, you had him as Leviathan in OVW.
Yeah.
And then you try to spice up the brother Devon storyline where he takes money away from the church, pockets it with Deacon Batista. And it just... Didn't he have, did they keep the contacts in the teeth or something?
I think for a bit. I don't remember.
I don't think
the
they kept the
entire
teeth.
time. No,
'Cause
I don't think the teeth
He
lasted.
had fang teeth in OVW when he was Leviathan.
Yeah.
But for me, it's not good. It's just I didn't like that debut. It's not the debut you would want for Batista. A better debut would have been holding him off to be just a singles competitor, not with anybody else. And then,
We could've
eventually
waited.
make his way up to Evolution.
We could
in
have
the
waited
next
till
2 years.
Evolution. We could have waited till Evolution.
Or just let
really.
him debut himself. Be the animal. Be him.
Yeah, but I mean, Batista, he moved on to bigger and better things, and became a star of his own. Didn't really need Devon, even though he is probably one of my favorite tag team competitors ever.
Batista?
But, no, Devon.
Oh, I thought you were saying Batista.
No.
I was like, God.
He didn't need Devon to pick him up. You know, he could have done it himself. But
Devon didn't need him. He didn't.
no, he could have done
that
his own
storyline
thing.
should have been done. Probably. I think it was good for a little bit, but other than that.
Yeah, but my number 2 least favorite debut. You're going to look at me weird.
You're gonna look at me weird for my number 1.
Shockmaster.
That should have been that should have been my honorable mention.
There we go. Okay. But my number 2 is Shockmaster. Everyone knows about Shockmaster.
Well,
almost. A lot
most.
of people. WCW, you know, they were introducing this mystery man.
Wasn't it supposed to be Typhoon?
It was Typhoon.
Tugboat. It was called Tugboat.
Yeah, it was. You know, they were debuting this mystery man, and you know, Sting was getting up there. He was trying to hype him up, and he goes, "The Shockmaster," and then he trips.
It wasn't his fault.
It wasn't
honestly.
his fault.
He was
I
wearing
don't blame him.
He was wearing a stormtrooper helmet covered in glitter.
Yeah, and I don't blame.
And I'm pretty sure the wall didn't break the way it was supposed to when he tripped over.
I don't blame the person behind the Shockmaster character, you know, Tugboat in WWF. But you have to put it on there. You know what I mean? They made action figures of him falling through the thing. You know what I mean? You have to put it on there. Yeah. You had to put it on the list. But, I mean...
I just completely forgot about him.
Yeah, well, that's just something that I always remembered. I knew I had to put it somewhere closer to the end. But pretty much that's all I had to say about it. Because I don't have any bad things to say about it other than it was a botched debut and it kind of ruined
And then it didn't go anywhere.
No, it didn't. And he deserved better in WCW.
I'm pretty sure if he took off his helmet in the first place and he
wasn't
got
wrestling
eliminated
in that.
first in War Games or something.
Yeah, pretty much. But anyway, moving past Shockmaster, I know we could talk about it for days and days, but your number 1 least favorite debut.
You're gonna look at me weird because you had it at number 3.
Okay.
Gobbledygooker.
Okay.
And
Well,
because the man behind the suit is Hector Guerrero, brother to Eddie Guerrero, to Chavo Guerrero Sr., the son of Gory Guerrero, the uncle to Chavo Guerrero Jr., and they had him in a turkey outfit.
The reason why I refer to him as the man behind the Gobbledygooker outfit is because I forgot who it was. Thank you for reminding me.
Hector Guerrero!
Thank you. As soon as you said it, I instantly knew everything about him.
Like I said, a member of one of the most famous wrestling families.
Yeah.
Whose members haven't been treated as fair in bigger companies. Like, yeah, Eddie was treated very good in WCW for the most part. WWE when he got his act together, a little bit in ECW, but ECW is just a whole dumpster fire. I think later on, and then Chavo, he doesn't get the recognition he deserves. But someone who has that much, from that family, treated like garbage, is insane. That's why it's like when you know who the person behind it was, it's not good. That is least favorite, and it's just the fact that, like we said, when you say you're number 3, just disappointing.
Yeah.
It's just disappointing.
It has nothing to do with the person.
It was booed out the building. Mean Gene couldn't save it for his life.
Yeah.
Rest his soul.
Yeah. Now we'll go to my number 1 least favorite debut, in my opinion, of all time. I think you're also going to look at me a little funny. Glacier.
Glacier? Who's Glacier?
Glacier was
that the Sub-Zero ripoff?
Sub-Zero ripoff from WCW. And let me tell you why. There's a lot of things about it. Number 1, they put too much money to back up that entrance and to back up that character.
You could have said the same thing for Oz. Kevin Nash.
That was going to be my honorable mention, but I had to put the zombie in there. But Oz we were getting up there. That was going to be my dishonorable
Or the
mention.
Yeti, who was a mummy.
Let's not. I don't want to talk about the mummy like that.
The Yeti. He was called a Yeti, but he was a mummy. Well, Glacier, I completely forgot about him because they had a lot of WCW had a lot of rip-off characters. Wasn't one supposed to be like Spider-Man?
I don't even know
and
about
it dropped
that.
off after a while. And there was one in WWF. It was like the Ninja Turtles.
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah. I do remember that.
And they were dropped quickly.
Yeah. But anyway, about Glacier. Glacier was, he was a Sub-Zero ripoff, and they backed him up when it comes to, trying to make him have the nice, cool outfit, a cool entrance. And he indeed was a martial artist. But number 1 in the ring, he was a little slow. He was a little slow in the ring, nothing too special. He wrestled in a blue lighting, a very dark blue lighting, Couldn't really see anything besides maybe just in the middle of the ring. Couldn't see very much. And also, his debut is tossed up about which match it was. A lot of people think that it was his match on Nitro against Big Bubba Rogers, which is incorrect. It was against the Gambler on WCW Worldwide, a little bit before that. But that was all in '96, I believe it was. And he stayed in WCW for a little bit, on and off. He had, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, 2 matches with Goldberg in his run.
I wouldn't know.
But, I mean, he didn't have a lot of momentum behind him. And I just feel that, there could have been a lot with him. But it was the mid-'90s, so it was just Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, that was kind of
I feel it wasn't what he deserved. You don't know much about him because of that, but the Glacier gimmick was just something that you had to put number 1 because the gimmick was bad, the entrance was okay, the match wasn't too good, and a lot of people don't even know which match was his debut. So that's my number 1 least favorite debut.
I wouldn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next subject, why don't we talk about our top 5 personal iconic debuts. Now, do you have any honorable mentions?
I do. I have one honorable mention, and I feel that a lot of people are going to be upset.
Because it's an honorable mention?
Yes. The Shield. I believe that the Shield debut is super iconic. That's why it had to be my honorable mention. Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns. They were all in NXT before they debuted in the main roster at Survivor Series. However, Seth Rollins, for the most part, was the only one in WWE at NXT that really made a huge impact. Roman and Dean, they did do stuff, and I'm not, taking away from what they did in NXT. They started off there, and I feel that, they learned a lot of things there through, they started off with FCW, then they went to NXT, but besides Seth Rollins, they didn't, no one won championships in NXT besides Seth Rollins. So that when they got there, if you watched NXT, you knew Seth Rollins, and you might have knew Dean Ambrose from CZW as Jon Moxley, but you didn't know them very much together as a stable. And so I feel that
it was kind of like the whole Brock Lesnar situation.
Yeah, it
like
just
if you didn't watch the other product, you wouldn't have known who it was. Even if you watched ROH, you haven't seen Tyler Black, who became Seth Rollins, in a while, so you wouldn't have really known. And like at the moment, they're kind of it's in the moment. You're not really putting a focus on them because you can't see them that well, and the camera's kind of jolting around up until after they do the triple powerbomb on Ryback, that you get to see their faces clearly, so you don't really know who it is.
Yeah. So, as a person who the next Monday after the Shield debuted, not knowing who any of them were, I feel that I can't put it in my top 5 because everyone who's on my top 5 I knew beforehand that they debuted. So, by default, I have to put the Shield as an honorable mention.
Yeah.
But moving on to your top 5 best debuts in your opinion, who do you have as your number 5?
Well, hold on. I have my honorable mentions.
Oh, yes, of course, your honorable mentions.
I was about to say. I have 3. Some of them I'll get to faster. The first one, Y2J.
Okay.
Enough said. He debuted. He got kind of buried by The Rock, but he debuted against The Rock, like promo wise, nonetheless. It was hyping him up. Everyone kind of figured it'd be Jericho, but still, like one of the most iconic debuts.
Yeah.
Then I have the Outsiders, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. They debuted. It was big. And it changed the landscape at the time because that's almost the height of the Monday Night Wars where it started, and then after that you kind of had WWE's pettiness with fake Diesel and fake Scott Hall, fake Riz Ramon, and it changed everything up just because these guys, these top WWF guys, the former world champion, a former Intercontinental champion that headlined WrestleMania's iconic moments over on enemy territory. Yeah. Especially after Curtain Call, which I don't think it was prominent. It was prominent enough for Triple H to get hurt, but it was just a big thing.
Yeah.
And then my next one happened last year, at Double or Nothing. Jon Moxley's AEW debut.
Yeah.
Fresh off the heels of his WWE departure from not re-signing and having a god-awful storyline where he just put over EC3, which got nowhere.
Yeah.
And EC3 got released recently. And debuting back in Impact. Another debut for you. Or at least that's what I think. Like, he kind of had like promo packages leading up to his 90 days running out, and then kind of appeared at Impact like through promos.
Yeah.
Which was weird, but we'll see where it goes.
But on the Moxley train, it's pretty...
It was big.
Yeah, it was pretty big. He just left WWE, and he had a big run with the Shield that I just mentioned, and he had a good singles run as the world champion and whatnot, but...
Yeah, well, good is a...
I thought it was good, but
His AJ Styles stuff is good.
We'll talk about that later on another episode. So, Jon Moxley was your third honorable mention?
Yeah.
Alrighty, well, my top 5, we're going to start there.
So
my number 5 is the Nexus.
See, I was going to put the Nexus also, but I just got to scribble them out.
Yeah.
Because I had other, in my head, debuts.
Well, here's why I picked the Nexus for number 5. Number 1, besides not being on main roster on Raw or SmackDown, NXT took the place...
more or less.
Yeah, NXT took the place of ECW on the Sci-Fi Channel at that time. And so, even though, yes, it wasn't Raw or SmackDown, you didn't have your John Cena's and your Undertakers, they were on TV, and a lot of people did watch them. We watched them, you and I, as kids, we watched NXT as well.
Unfortunately.
On Tuesday. And so we already knew who Wade Barrett, Heath Slater, Justin Gabriel, David Otunga, Skip Sheffield, I could name them all if I had to. We knew who all of them were. So when they debuted, you could point them out, hey, I know who those people are. Why is it over the Shield? NXT was a little different when Shield made its debut compared to what NXT was in 2010 when the Nexus debuted. Also, it was the main event of the night. It was a Raw viewer's choice, I think it was, and it was CM Punk versus John Cena. And it was, two big stars, and then the new blood, I guess, came in and
New blood, but they were in like their late 20s, almost early 30s.
But I mean, they were new to the product. And so
Daniel Bryan, yes, he was newer to WWE. I know what you mean.
Yeah, but they were new to the product, and you
More or
knew who
less.
they were because you watched them on TV, and then you could point them out rather than the Shield. So that's why it's my number 5. It's not the best debut, but I think it was something that made an impact for most of their careers. But moving on to your top 5, what is your number 5?
Well, I kind of had to move stuff around.
Okay.
At first, it was... my number 5 is now my number 4.
Yeah.
But number 5 was my number 3.
Yeah.
So my number 5 now is Team 3D's debut in TNA.
Okay.
October 1st, 2005. The reason for that is it's so out there. But growing up, before we started watching wrestling, really,
Yeah.
2008, we had a top 50 greatest moments in TNA history.
Yes, the DVD.
And one of them was Team 3D. And just I would be watching it. It was right when we moved into an older house back in 2008. And so we didn't really have cable yet, just because we were still getting used to things. But we had power, and so we had
The
the
DVD.
DVD. And watching the DVD, rewatching it, also brings into my number 4, but I'll get that in a minute. But it was just such a big thing because that was a night with a lot of debuts, mainly trying to get at Jeff Jarrett. And
Yeah.
Team 3D was just one of those. It's like Team 3D, the Dudley Boys, they're one of the biggest tag teams in wrestling history in WWE, WWF, TNA, and ECW. They're
Yeah.
the biggest teams. Probably one of the first teams. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did they win the WCW tag team titles when it was in WWE?
I'm
They might
not
not have.
sure. I'm not
But
sure on that.
they're one of the first teams to hold the WWF, ECW, and TNA tag team titles.
Absolutely,
And I'm sure.
yeah.
Maybe the
Probably the
Japan,
first.
Maybe the New Japan titles too, because I
Yeah.
heard they had a bunch of belts at one
I think they
point.
were the first to win all those.
But they won all of these belts, and it's just a big debut for me. Even though I didn't watch it, I watched it 3 years later. It's still something that stuck with me because it's something I remember all that time before I really started watching
Yeah.
wrestling at that point religiously. Now
Yeah.
slacked off a little bit, but it's still something that was big.
My number 4 is one of your honorable mentions, Jon Moxley, his AEW debut. I think that the reason why it needs to be on the list is because AEW had just started. It wasn't even a company yet as like Weekly Dynamite on Wednesday on TNT. It was still, the Double or Nothing pay-per-view. It was the second pay-per-view after All In, after they announced that AEW was going to be a thing. He had just got released from WWE, and a lot of people thought, yeah, he is going to go to AEW. I mean, that's what I thought. But to see him in AEW, see him in the other company that wants to rival, quote unquote, the other product,
The top dog.
it was cool. It was really cool. I thought it was one of the best things I've seen in a long time with wrestling. And the fact that he starts just going at Jericho, someone he feuded with in WWE, I thought it was cool. And then he went...
Especially after Jericho won the title.
Yeah. Well, that wasn't when he won the title, though. That's when he went against Omega.
Oh, yeah, it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, but, but then they feuded for the belt later on.
Oh, yeah.
But it started the feud with Kenny Omega.
Oh,
and that was something...
That's when Hangman Page won the match that guaranteed him a spot for the title.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, you just got mixed up. It's okay. But
I don't watch AEW.
I understand. Yeah, I think that it's one of those debuts that you think back and you're like, yeah, that was pretty cool. And it was one of the things in the last probably 10 years that you're just like, that was pretty cool. That's all I gotta say. Pretty cool. That's the quote of the day. Pretty cool for Jon Moxley. Anyway, moving on. Your number 3.
No, 4.
Oh, your number 4. Sorry.
Number 4 that used to be my number 5. Messed up the list.
You just mixed up a lot.
Yeah,
It's okay.
I switched it while we were talking. Jeff Hardy's TNA debut.
Okay.
June 23rd, 2004. Because, that debut, same DVD, same top 50 moments, but he, Jeff had his problems in the past. Like I said, we won't dive into it, but he's had his problems in the past.
Yeah.
And
has made up for it.
He made up for it for the most part, especially recently he made up for it.
Yeah.
But at that time, just got released from WWE, failed to clean up his act in WWE, so they released him. It's just fresh off of him thinking about retirement, trying to go into music. And then
he had his little, one-off in Ring of Honor that didn't work out. They did not want him there.
And then, debuting in TNA for the X Division title against AJ Styles. And even though the match ended in disqualification, no contest.
It's like you're thinking about this match. Jeff Hardy, AJ Styles, TNA, X Division title. What can go wrong? Let me tell you. Kid Cash.
Kid Cash can go wrong because he interrupted the match.
No disrespect to Kid Cash, but
no,
Kid Cash.
Kid Cash was supposed to be in the match, taken out, storyline. I'm assuming storyline injury. He was kind of hobbling around in the ring, but just taken out. And it's just something that would have been a great debut. Well, it was a great debut.
Yeah.
But it would have been awesome if he had won, because that's the one TNA title he never won. At least real TNA title, not like the King of the Mountain or television or whatever.
Or not. That
keep
belt.
changing
it's
it.
the same belt, and they just keep renaming it. They've gotten rid of that belt now.
But if he had won it, even if he lost, it was against AJ Styles. It's someone that TNA had the opportunity of pretty much bringing up, even though he was in ROH a little bit. He was one of the homegrown talents. So having someone that was a WWF guy in TNA against one of TNA's guys, it was big. It was big.
So my number 3 on my top 5 greatest debuts is AJ Styles at the Royal Rumble 2016. It was rumored that he got signed. It was rumored that he was coming. There were rumors that he was going to debut at the Royal Rumble, but he even said he wasn't.
Yeah.
And then he showed up number 3 in the Rumble and was face-to-face with the top dog in the company, which is Roman Reigns.
I don't want to get into
Love
that.
him or hate him, he was what they were trying to make the biggest star that was there, especially at that time. The crowd reaction.
One of the biggest pops in recent history.
Exactly. And it's just, for a lot of people, which I feel like almost everyone who watched that, unless you only watched WWE wrestling, you knew who AJ Styles was in some way. He was in TNA. He got pushed in TNA. There was things, on and off when it comes to storyline and contracts and whatnot.
He won everything in TNA.
It's the thing that TNA made.
He was the John Cena equivalent He was the equivalent to John Cena in TNA.
If there was one star that they made and just
could
made
rely
him
on.
skyrocket was AJ Styles, because he was TNA. He was Impact Wrestling. He was the guy that could win or lose, but he would make the match almost perfect. And that's why, when he moved and he left TNA, he was like, what's going to happen? What happened? New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Yeah.
Bullet Club. IWGP World Championship. And then he finished off his, when it comes to pay-per-views, I guess, at Wrestle Kingdom against Nakamura for the IWGP Intercontinental Championship. What better way to go from one company to the other? Like, he was just a star anywhere he went. And I think
Same
that
thing could be said for Doc and Luke Doc Gallows, whatever you want to call him, Carl Anderson.
Yeah, they were a star.
Because they were the same year.
Yeah, and so he left there. What's next? WWE. He went somewhere that he has never been before, and there was a lot of speculation of whether he was ever going to go in his career or not. And he did.
So late in his career.
Yeah, so late in his career. He was already almost 40 at that point. And he showed up. Did he slow down? Absolutely not. He kept on going. And it was something that it wouldn't have started off with just momentum. It wasn't for his Royal Rumble debut, because it was against Roman Reigns. And then after that, he went to feud with Chris Jericho. And then he feuded with John Cena, Dean Ambrose, and just so on and so on. And I think that was something that helped him, and I think it pushed him, and that's why it's my number 3 on my list. Moving on, what is your number 3 on your list?
The same one.
AJ Styles. Okay, well,
Royal Rumble 2016.
You go ahead and talk a little more about it.
Well, it's funny because, when we were talking about when you said the same thing for your number 3, it made me start thinking, crap, I forgot AJ Styles' debut, New Japan, with the Bullet Club, and it's just that debut was so big. And then thinking about Bullet Club, it also makes me think of Finn Balor, but that's different because, when he debuted in NXT. But Styles, the only bad thing about Styles' debut is the cameras.
The camera angle.
The camera's focused on Roman.
Botched camera angle.
They focused on Roman's face, and you missed, for the most part, except if you were in a crowd. And if you
saw it.
If you were watching on YouTube after the fact.
You saw it.
The I Am Phenomenal. The big reveal.
Yeah.
It's like this theme music. It's like, who is this? What is this? It's a number 3 spot. This is weird. AJ Styles comes out, and you're focused on Roman on a network the entire time. The only bad thing to a great debut
was the camera angle.
Was the camera angle.
And
Roman.
in fact, he lasted so long in the Rumble.
And he was eliminated by Kevin Owens.
Yeah, I mean, he was in there for so long.
Someone who he had good matches with.
Later on.
Probably in the indie scene. And then later on SmackDown, U.S. titles.
Oh, yeah, that was the summer of just Owens and Styles with the United
2017.
States Championship. It was just, I loved it. I loved every second of it. I loved every moment. And it was even better when it was, I can't remember what day it was, forgive me, but it was AJ versus Kevin Owens versus Chris Jericho for the United States title on SmackDown. That was awesome. That was a great match for SmackDown. It was the main event. It was just...
The funny thing is just the fact that Owens had just, was it retained or he won it back or something?
Something like that, yeah.
Well, no, he retained, Jericho came back, and then Styles won it. Because that was a return for Jericho because he had been out for a little bit.
There was that little bit in time where, I mean, it was good, but it was a little bit in time in where they were just playing hot potato with that belt.
Yeah, between Owens and Styles.
But at first Owens and Jericho. Because Jericho had won it in that 2-on-1 handicap match with Roman before Mania, and then
Owens won at WrestleMania.
Owens won at Mania, and then Jericho won it at Backlash?
Maybe.
Somewhere like that. And then Owens won it back that Tuesday. I think it was Tuesday SmackDown at that point. And then after that, Styles won it at Madison Square Garden. And then from there on, it was just amazing.
Well, no, I thought Styles won it at a SmackDown.
His original win for the United States Championship was at Madison Square Garden. But then he won it again on that SmackDown. Mm-hmm. And then after that, I think he retained everything until he lost it to Baron Corbin later on in the year in that triple threat. I think it was with Dolph Ziggler as well.
We don't talk about that.
But, yeah, I mean, it started off something great with AJ Styles. With the debut at Royal Rumble 2016. But moving on, my number 2 on my top 5 greatest debuts, The Undertaker.
Oh, piss off.
Is that number?
That's my number 2 as well. Piss
we'll
off.
We'll just talk together about it. So
I hate you.
okay,
Survivor Series 1990.
yes, it didn't get as much of a pop as AJ Styles or Jon Moxley.
Well, it's because
but
he wasn't known.
I know
Like, he was Texas Red.
Yeah,
he was big Red Death, big whatever it was in WCW, and probably Smoky Mountain and stuff like that.
Yeah, but the thing is it didn't need a big pop. He was supposed to be mysterious. He was supposed to be scary. He was supposed to be large, and the crowd showed that.
Well, he got close enough to a pop as you can, because once he came out, everybody was like, "Oh my God, look at how big this guy!"
Look at this man.
I
Yeah.
mean, quoting, who was it? Bobby Heenan. He's like, "Look at this, like ham hock," or whatever he
pretty
says.
much, yeah.
He was huge, and he's huge now. He's almost, not exactly, but close to 7 feet tall, as is. But being billed as 7 foot, over 300 pounds at the time, coming out with Brother Love, being part of Ted DiBiase's team at Survivor Series, especially getting the first elimination, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
And you could tell that
Very quick.
very quick.
Very quick.
Hitting his first tombstone, a rough tombstone, just because
first tombstone.
of the delivery by the opponent, but it was just something big that happened, and it's 30 years later almost.
Yeah.
He's still talked about today, especially with the Last Ride documentary and everything going on, quote unquote retiring.
Yeah, we don't know.
He's
really
not
don't
retired.
know.
He's just waiting for that next big money
Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia show
Tour,
that Vince
yeah.
needs him to go at.
Anyway, moving on. But Undertaker, iconic debut.
Very.
Number 1, and I swear to goodness, if it's the same one, my number 1 greatest debut in wrestling history, in my opinion, what I have seen, Kane.
Off. Literally the same 3, 2, and 1. Are you serious? And we have notes right here that lists off our top 5. I did not look at his notes.
And I didn't look at his.
I can't read his handwriting. I swapped some of mine while we're talking, just looking at it.
Oh my goodness.
There is no way we had the top 3. There's absolutely no way.
We did, apparently. So, my original number 2 was Jon Moxley, but I switched it to number 4 because Taker's, I couldn't. Taker's just too good. But Kane, let's just talk about it.
Bad Blood, In Your House, Bad Blood.
97.
October 5th, 97. In the middle, or near the tail end of the first ever Hell in a Cell match between bitter rivals Undertaker and Shawn Michaels. This was the match that set the bar for Hell in a Cells, especially the second Hell in a Cell the next year with Mankind at King of the Ring.
Yeah.
Kane coming out, weeks building up to Paul Bearer just saying, your brother Kane, and like threatening the backstory, which was in kayfabe, Undertaker burning down his family's house, burning it down, letting his parents die.
That's dark.
And leaving Kane in there
It's dark.
to burn. But then he lives, and now he's come back in a wrestling company to face him. It just everything from
spandex
and spandex. Oh, it wasn't really spandex.
Yeah, well,
and everything from his look, the mask, the attire, to Paul Bearer being at his side, to coming out to the music, the red lighting, the flames shooting out, ripping the cage door off, throat punching the referee, standing eye to eye with the Undertaker, being taller than the Undertaker, choking him, looks like he was going to go for a chokeslam, then tombstoning the Undertaker, giving Shawn Michaels the win. Setting up not the best feud, because even while being kayfabe brothers are not the best to work with one-on-one, but setting up the big match at WrestleMania 14 between the two, setting up a career-long rivalry. Kane wouldn't have been there without The Undertaker, just because without Undertaker there wouldn't have been room for a storyline with a brother.
Well,
it's still talked about to this day.
I'll start off with saying this. The Kane character is so much better than the Dentist character.
Yeah, Isaac Yankem.
Yes.
And Fake Diesel. He was Fake Diesel.
And Fake Diesel.
Mayor Kane was Fake Diesel.
Yes.
And he's a mayor.
But it was better than Fake Diesel. It was better than the dentist. And looking
Probably
back
better
on
than anything WCW would have gave him.
yeah,
at that
but
time.
looking back on it, it was something that you just knew was going to start something crazy in WWE in the Attitude Era. Started the Attitude Era. It was something that was going to continue, and it was something that was going to be on the edgier side of the product because it was two dark, mysterious characters going at it. And for a long time, Undertaker wouldn't hit him.
He didn't want to fight his
brother. And he finally did. They had the WrestleMania match. They had an Inferno match.
He had a first Inferno match.
Later on in the career, they had a Buried Alive match. Kane helped with the Vince McMahon Buried Alive match. They went on to do so many things. They even had their own Hell in a Cell match. They went on to do so many things with one another when it came to tag teaming, when it came to do their own solo work, whether it came to do with their feud together. They did a lot together. And with just Kane himself, he went on to maybe not go to Undertaker level when it comes to WWF Championship after WWF Championship, but maybe the WWE Championship, the ECW Championship, the World Heavyweight Championship, the Tag Team Championship, and so on and so on. Feuds with Matt Hardy, feuds with other great talent. He did something that a lot of people didn't do. He went from being super popular to not so popular, super popular to not so popular.
To a mayor.
To being the mayor of Knox County. And I think his debut started something beautiful in his career and beautiful in the company.
And you got to think of Jim Ross when he was on commentary. That's gotta be Kane. That's your third quote of the day. That's gotta be Kane.
Pretty
that's
cool.
so iconic now.
Look at the size of that ham hock, and that's gotta be Kane. That's it.
You think of like one of the most iconic debuts ever. Kane is up there just because the delivery, everything was right about it, from storytelling wise to delivery to not messing everything up, and just being the one person to stand up to The Undertaker. Taller than him. This is before the Giant was in WWE, before Big Show was there. So you didn't have anybody really taller than Undertaker besides like Giant Gonzalez, which faded away after a while. He was like the first big guy that could be seen as, oh, this guy is, he's as dangerous as The Undertaker.
Yeah.
And could definitely do some damage.
So, looking back on our least favorite and our favorites.
Somehow we had the top
three same. Would you, now looking back and knowing that Glacier existed and other ones, would there be any that you'd change? Or would you leave it the same?
Probably not.
Well, I would leave mine the same.
Looking back, there's probably worse debuts. Like I know there's worse debuts, and I said something about them, like Shockmaster. Yeah. I could probably fill out Batista and Brock probably, but top 5 is just when you just try to think of it off the top of your head. What are some pretty bad debuts? What are some pretty good debuts? Without rewatching them to really know, hey, this was really good. This was great. This was absolute crap. It was horrible. I don't know. I would definitely swap out probably 2, 3, and 4 of my least favorite, but Brian Cage is probably, especially right now, it's up there.
5.
It's up there. There's probably a bunch of TNA. Well, actually, I probably would swap one of the middle ones with Mike Kanellis. Because that god-awful theme song.
We'll do the honorable mention. He deserved better. Both of them. Mike and Maria.
Mike Bennett. He should have been Mike Bennett, not Mike Kanellis. They were just trying to bank off of Maria's last name because she was in WWE before.
Yeah,
Mike Bennett. Say his name right, WWE. Mike Bennett.
But throughout his entire run, personally, I never lost hope in him and
I lost hope real quick.
I tried. I was hoping, especially with that 205 Live run, I was hoping that maybe he would get that Cruiserweight Championship, but he never did. But
and then he got released.
Sadly.
After the birth of his second child.
We'll see how his career continues. But
I say ROH. I think he'll be on ROH.
Well, we'll see.
Well, he's recently on an ROH Strong podcast.
Yeah. One more question. What is one debut? Go on record right now. What is one debut that you wish got more recognition than it has? For me, I'll go ahead and tell you from the beginning of the podcast episode, I'm still going with Rey Mysterio. I think there was a lot going on for him, and I think he should have had more momentum than he already had. But you don't really see it. It gets, covered by the John Cena debut, which is iconic, but it gets covered by that, and it gets covered by a lot of other debuts. And I think he deserved a lot more than he got with his debut match. But what is your pick?
Randy Orton probably should have had a better
Randy
debut.
Orton.
That stupid haircut. And then the stupid storyline where it's like they're trying to get cheap heat on him just for having, what was it? It was the little things he would say, kind of like flash facts or something.
Yeah,
like,
how his arm was hurt.
yeah, how he got hurt after a few weeks of wrestling. First opponent, probably a good thing to go against Bob Holly, but
Yeah, really good opponent.
But come on, Orton. That was one of the many 2002 debuts out of the OVW school, or not school, but OVW people, like Batista and John Cena and
That just
Brock
kinda-
Lesnar. That him and Batista kind of went under the radar, and Ray, especially being 2002. Ray was already accomplished WCW. He wrestled for ECW. He wrestled in Mexico and in the States. But Orton, he was just almost, you felt that he was doomed from the start. But thankfully, he kind of broke away from that. Evolution helped.
Saved it.
And then breaking out on his own, being the Viper, being the Apex Predator, Legend Killer, all of those
A lot of
helped.
stuff.
And then now he's, 14-time world champion?
Somewhere around there. Double digits.
Close to being tied with Cena and Flair, almost.
Getting there. If he gets any more.
He probably will.
And that's how we're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for listening to the first episode of the LA Do Wrestling podcast. You could follow me at Clinton Wells 2001 on Instagram, and you can also follow our music engineer at chance.cummings.507 on Instagram.
And you can follow me at LA Do Brand on Instagram, and our podcast editor, Ethan, at EthanThompson._ on Instagram.
Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.